So we're going to look at some scripture today, and we're going to go to the book of Daniel. And we're going to look at this concept, the art of kingdom negotiation. You know, we can learn a lot from the way Daniel negotiated. And so we're going to kind of dig deep into that, put it into a business context, and, you know, kind of give you a little bit of training here and so forth. So Daniel was a really, really interesting guy, right? So, you know, this is around the time of Ezekiel. He's doing his thing. Daniel's doing his. And life gets really interesting. So I'm going to read a fair bit of this book, pick up some little bits and pieces, and then try and put it into a 2019 context for you. So the start of the book of Daniel goes like this. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, you'd know old Neb, you would have heard some sermons on him over the years. Neb, the king of Babylon, not a good place, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. Okay, so in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came to Jerusalem and besieged it. Here's interesting. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, and with some of the artifacts of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God, and he brought the articles into the treasure house of his God. Then the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel and some of the king's descendants and some of the nobles, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed for them a daily provision of the king's delicacies, of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them, so that at the end of that time they might serve before the king. Right? There's a fair bit in there. So they've been chosen. They're naturally gifted. They're good looking. They have wisdom and discernment. So they're brought into the king's service. They're going to get given the king's food, the king's wine, and they're going to have to learn. Okay, they're going to have to learn the language of Babylon. I wonder how many modern day Christians would happily go and learn the language of Babylon. Now from among them, the sons of Judah, were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them, the chief of the eunuchs gave names. He gave Daniel the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, as you know those names. Now, this is where it starts to get really interesting. So not only do they have to eat Babylonian food, learn Babylonian language, they've now been given a Babylonian name, okay? But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel, see this is interesting, now God had brought Daniel into the favor and goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs. See, when you get given a divine strategy and you walk out your divine assignment, there is a favor from the Lord that comes with that, okay? He moves on the hearts of the people that show you favor or move out of the way for you to be able to achieve what you need to do, okay? This is what the world doesn't understand. The world thinks if you do it kingdom, you lose. What we understand is when you do it kingdom, heaven backs you, makes the changes you need, and it creates the way for you to move forward. So now God had brought Daniel into the favor and the goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king. In other words, I don't want to give you anything other than what I'm told to, because when you look skinny and gaunt because you've been, vegan, then I'm going to get into trouble. So Daniel said to the steward, and this is the righteous alternative that he comes up with. This is how good of a negotiator Daniel is, because this is what he says. So Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance be examined before you and the appearance of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies. And as you see fit, so deal with your servants. So here's Daniel's idea. The head of the eunuchs is saying, you've got to eat Babylonian food. Daniel's like, I don't want to defile myself and go down that path. Now, just think about that. Have you ever found yourself in business where somebody wants you to do something that's unethical? Have you ever found that you could really easily grow your business if you just bowed your knee to something, but you really don't want to? Okay, same situation, a few thousand years apart. But here's what he said. He doesn't say no, and he doesn't say yes. That's why he's a master negotiator. What he's able to do is distill, how do I get what both parties want and find the middle ground? Then, knowing I'm on assignment, God's going to move to make sure that it all works out okay. Please test your servants for 10 days and give us vegetables to eat and drink. Then let our appearance be examined, and then do what you want with us based on what you see. So he consented with them in this manner and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, their features appeared better and fatter. Now, I don't know about you, all this world that's all like fat's a bad thing, well, it got Daniel out of a lot of trouble because he was better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of the king's food. Thus the steward took away their portions of delicacies and the wine that they were to drink and gave them vegetables only because they looked healthier. Now, some of you vegans out there are like, that's where I'm a vegan. That's not a good enough reason to be a vegan. In fact, there's no good reason to be a vegan. All right. So if there's any of you watching, I'm going to get some angry faces up in this place right about now. It goes on to say this. And I'll just want to kind of fast forward. As for these 4 young men, God gave them knowledge and skills in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel the ability to understand visions and dreams. Okay, God-given skills. They passed the test, God-given skills. Now, at the end of the days, when the king had said that they should be brought in, so after 3 years, the chief of the eunuchs brought them before Nebuchadnezzar. Then the king interviewed them, and among them none were found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they served before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding about which the king examined them, he found them to be 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers who were in his realm. Think about it. Have you ever been tempted or been asked to be tempted to compromise and bow your knee like Daniel did, right? They go besiege the town, they bring back the people, they bring back all the gold and the booty, and then they say, you've got to conform to our world, this corrupt, unrighteous, self-interest, dog-eat-dog world. And Daniel has to go in service for the king, but he doesn't conform. Right? He understands how to talk Babylon but live kingdom. We've got to be able to do the same thing right now. We've got to be able to operate kingdom in a world that doesn't care about morals and ethics and supply chain and people and paying fair taxes and looking after people. In a world that doesn't want that, it's no different to the Babylon of the day. In fact, it's probably better today than it was back then. But interestingly enough, you will find yourself, if you do business for long enough, you will find yourself fully tested. You will find yourself tested. You will be asked to bow your knee, and it's the devil, okay, trying to throw you off track. It's your job to come up with the righteous alternative on making sure that you can find a way to not say yes and not say no and keep going. Let me just give you a random thought just for fun. A few years ago, many years ago, maybe, well, it was 2010, so 9 years ago, maybe 2011, 8 years ago, somewhere around there. One of my clients comes to me and he says, hey, listen, we had a bit of history, things were going well. He said, and we had both had this interest in cars, nice cars. And so he said to me, hey, I want to do this thing. It was this drive experience thing that we both kind of talked about. And he said, hey, listen, I want to do that. Let's do that together. But, this guy was not a kingdom guy at the time. And he said to me, hey, listen, why don't we wrap it all up in a bundle where you provide some coaching and we go and do this drive thing together and you invoice me for all of that and, da-da-da-da. And I thought to myself, there's no way I could do that. It's illegal, right, for us to try and claim this, this pure pleasure play that we were going to do by racing cars together. But, and I didn't want to say no, straight out because I didn't want to miss out on the revenue component that came with this deal. I didn't want to say yes and bow my knee to it. So I was like, how do I do this thing? And so here's what I did. All I did was I literally went, okay, well, the only reason why I can't come up with something else is because I don't have enough information. And this is the art of the negotiator. This is what Daniel was able to do. He was able just to decide, okay, but what do they need? What do they want out of this? And then reverse engineer an outcome where they get what they want and I get what I want, okay? That's the art of negotiation. We've got to stop pushing our agenda, we've got to stop pushing our one way of doing things and start reverse engineering. How do I get their outcome and how do I get mine? This applies to sales, this applies to putting on staff, this applies to getting rid of staff. This is negotiation that you are doing all the time with your suppliers and everything. How do I give them what they want as well as get what I want? And it probably doesn't look like a yes or a no, it's probably the middle ground like Daniel did. So anyway, I said to this guy, well, what is it you are really trying to achieve out of this? Great question. And he says, oh, well, I just want the tax deduction. I want the tax deduction. I want to kind of put it to my business. I get a tax deduction on that. And I thought, okay, fair play. I don't because I want to do things this way. But understand this guy's not in the kingdom, so why would he care about this sort of stuff? And so literally on the spot, I was able to go, okay, so what is that worth to you? And it was something like $1,600. It was his tax deduction. It wasn't a huge amount of money. So I thought, okay, so all I thought to myself is, I've just got to find $1,600 worth of value for this guy and just kind of put it in a different light. So I just basically said to him, I said, so you're just looking to get a tax deduction of $1,600? Yep. And to save you all of the details, I was able to just put another service into the mix provided by somebody else that was going to give this guy his dollar figure worth of value. It was all ethical. We took the car driving thing out of the deal. We paid for it personally out of our own personal finances. But because he got a win on the business deal, he was happy to do the trade-off and off we went. So I got to still make the money in business, cost me a little bit so that I didn't have to bow my knee to that, cost me a little bit of margin to be able to put this on the table, but I still got the deal and I got to put that personally and still go and have a good time, all right? We have to learn this art of negotiation. We cannot be black and white, yes and no, all right? We can't bow our knee to Baal because it'll control us for the rest of our life. We can't say no to business opportunities forever because we won't build it. So we've got to find this middle ground, all right? Just like Daniel did, okay? There's a couple of questions in there that you want to ask when somebody wants you to do something that's not ethical. Just pause for a minute and say, what are you hoping to get out of this? And if there's another way to arrive at that, would you be happy to go ahead? And then come up with some creative way to get both parties what they need, and then you'll get ahead. Most people have never thought about it, okay? And if you say to them, there's another way to do this that we don't have to compromise, and you can come up with one, they'll go for it. It's just that they're not creative enough to do it. Remember, when you honor the kingdom, God applies the favor. Just like the head of the eunuchs, God moved on his heart to have compassion and grace and favor for Daniel. He'll do the same for you when you honor the process. Did you know that this show goes onto Facebook, it goes onto YouTube, it goes onto Instagram, it goes onto iTunes, and it goes onto LinkedIn? Do me a favor, would you? Tell more people about the show so that I can spread the message. Love ya. See ya.